$70,000 a year. On paper, it sounds like the kind of salary that should let you live well in Canada, maybe even comfortably. After all, the median income in this country sits around 46,000, so earning 70,000 puts you well above the middle of the pack. But here's the strange part. Most Canadians pulling in that exact number don't feel rich. They don't even feel stable. They feel stretched. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why, where every dollar actually goes, and what life on 70,000 really looks like in 2026 across the provinces. Let's start with the first hit, the one nobody warns you about when you sign the offer letter: taxes. If you're earning 70,000 in Ontario, your take home after federal tax, provincial tax, CPP, and EI lands around 53,000 a year. In British Columbia, it's closer to 50,800. In Alberta, where provincial rates are lower, you might bring home around 54,500. Quebec residents see the biggest bite, often netting around 49,000 because of higher provincial taxes that fund services like cheaper childcare and tuition. So already, that shiny 70,000 number has shrunk by roughly $16,000 to $21,000 before a single bill gets paid. Divide what's left by 12, and most people are working with somewhere between $4,100 and $4,500 a month. And there's another detail buried in that first paycheck worth understanding. CPP contributions changed again in 2026. The first earnings ceiling, known as the YMPU, jumped to 74,600 this year. And the second tier of enhanced CPP, called CPP2, now pulls additional contributions from earnings between 74,600 and roughly 84,700. If you're sitting right at 70,000, you're still under that first ceiling, so you avoid the extra CPP2 bite for now. But if a raise pushes you into the mid-70s or higher, your take-home grows more slowly than your raise suggests because those new contributions kick in. Understanding this matters because it shapes how you negotiate raises, how you plan side income, and whether bumping into a higher bracket is worth the trade-off in any given year. A lot of Canadians chase a $5,000 raise without realizing that after tax, CPP, EI, and the extra contributions on top, they might only see 2,800 of it land in their account over the year. That's not a reason to turn down a raise, but it's a reason to stop treating gross pay as the number that matters. The only figure that ever pays your rent is the one that hits your bank account. And speaking of rent, that's exactly where the next chunk of your paycheck disappears. Once your real take-home lands on the first of the month, the very first thing it touches is housing. In Vancouver, the average one-bedroom apartment now runs around $2,635 a month, according to the June 2026 rent reports. That alone eats more than half of your monthly take-home before you've turned on a light or eaten a meal. Toronto has actually softened over the past year, with one-bedroom averages closer to $2,000, though prime downtown buildings still push past $2,400. Move out to the suburbs and you might find something closer to $1,700, but then you're adding transit costs or a car. In Montreal, rent for a similar one-bedroom sits closer to $1,700. In Calgary and Edmonton, you can still find decent one-bedrooms around $1,600 to $1,800. In Halifax, Winnipeg, or smaller cities in the Maritimes and Prairies, rent drops to between $1,300 and $1,600. So depending on your postal code, your housing alone takes anywhere from 30% to over 60% of your paycheck. That single decision, where to live, shapes everything else about your financial life. For most renters on 70,000 in Toronto or Vancouver, that ratio is closer to 45 or 50% before utilities are even added in, which is why the rest of the budget breaks down so easily. Then comes the grocery shock. Canada's food price report for 2026 projects food costs rising another 4 to 6% this year, with the average family of four expected to spend over $17,500 on groceries annually. For a single adult, that translates to roughly $450 to $550 a month just to eat at home. And these numbers assume careful shopping, not impulse buys, not delivery apps, not the $18 salads at lunch. Add restaurants and coffee, and most people on 70,000 are spending $700 to $900 a month on food when they're being honest with themselves. Utilities and phone bills are the next drain on the budget. Hydro, internet, heat, and a cell phone plan together run about $250 to $350 a month in most provinces, more in winter, especially if you're in a drafty older building in Ontario or the Maritimes. Then transportation. A monthly transit pass in Toronto is $156. In Vancouver, it's around 110 to 189 depending on zones. If you drive instead, you're looking at insurance averaging 1,800 a year in Ontario, gas at roughly 200 a month, and that's before parking, maintenance, or the car payment itself, which now averages over 700 a month for a new vehicle in Canada. Add it all up: rent, food, utilities, phone, transportation. For someone living alone in a major Canadian city on 70,000, those five categories alone often consume $3,500 to $4,000 a month, which leaves somewhere between $100 and $600 for everything else. Health and dental costs your employer doesn't cover, clothing, haircuts, a birthday gift, a vet bill, one unexpected expense, and the budget collapses. This is how someone earning nearly double the median income still ends up carrying a credit card balance. According to Equifax Canada's 2026 data, total non mortgage consumer debt in this country has now crossed $698 billion, and a huge chunk of that growth is coming from middle earners exactly like this. So, what does a smart financial life on 70,000 actually look like in 2026? It starts with one principle most Canadians ignore: your salary doesn't determine your wealth, your spread does. The spread between what comes in and what goes out. If you're netting 4,300 a month and spending 4,300, your income could double tomorrow and you'd still feel broke a year later, because lifestyle inflation is what drains every middle-class paycheck in this country before it has a chance to build anything. The people who actually pull ahead on 70,000 are the ones who treat their first 15% like it doesn't exist. They automate it into a TFSA, an RRSP, or a first home savings account the moment it lands. They invested in low-cost index funds. They don't touch it. And over 10 years, with average market returns around 7%, that habit alone turns a 70,000 salary into a portfolio worth well over $90,000, while everyone around them stays in the same place. The second move is brutally simple. Attack the highest interest debt first. Credit cards in Canada are still charging 19 to 22%. There is no investment, no side hustle, and no clever tax trick that beats paying off a 21% debt. Every dollar you throw at it is a guaranteed 21% return. Most people skip this step because it feels less exciting than investing, but mathematically, it's the single fastest way to free up cash flow on a middle income. And once that debt is gone, the psychological shift is just as powerful as the financial one. Your paycheck finally starts to feel like yours again, instead of money you're renting from a bank. The third move is to use the tax system the way it was built to be used. A 70,000 earner in Ontario who contributes 7,000 to an RRSP gets roughly 2,100 back at tax time, because that contribution drops you into a lower marginal bracket. The TFSA contribution room in 2026 sits at 7,000 for the year, and the lifetime room for someone who's been eligible since 2009 is now 109,000. And the first home savings account, if you qualify, gives you 8,000 in annual room for 2026, combining the tax deduction of an RRSP with the tax-free growth of a TFSA. So the honest answer to what life is like on 70,000 a year in Canada in 2026 is this: it depends almost entirely on two choices: where you live and what you do with the gap between your income and your spending. In the wrong city with the wrong habits, 70,000 feels like poverty with a nice job title. In the right setup with intentional decisions, that same salary becomes the foundation of real, lasting financial freedom. If this gave you a clearer picture of your own situation, do me a favor and hit the like button. And if you're not subscribed yet, now's the time. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. I'll see you there.